The NHL Draft Lottery. What is it and why does it even exist in the first place? Well, the Draft Lottery was adopted back by the NHL in 1995 as a way to prevent teams from purposefully tanking their season in order to receive a higher draft pick the following year. The original format was a bit problematic. It would place teams in order of their final season rankings, so a team who finished in last place would get the best pick in the next year's draft and so on. So in order to prevent this purposeful tanking, the NHL wanted to fix this problem and introduced a lottery draft as a resolution for this. This lottery format would feature all 16 teams who missed the Stanley Cup playoffs and place them in this pool where they would be giving a percentage at the first overall pick based on where they finished in the league. Teams who finish further in the standings get the highest odds, but as history has shown, this team doesn't always get the best pick. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to take a look at the past 10 NHL draft lotteries and give the highest percentage team the first overall pick in each year to see what their roster would look like and maybe predict if whether or not they would win a Stanley Cup based on this information. Now we're going to be basically going from 2015 to 2024, starting with 2024 being this year's draft. So if you guys have been liking the content lately, make sure you hit that subscribe button now. Does a lot for me, lets me know that you guys are interested in the content, and let's get right into this one. So let's take a look at the first year of our lottery drafts, and this one's not very interesting. The worst team in the league for the 2023-24 season was the San Jose Sharks, giving them the highest odds at 18.5%, and the Sharks ended up getting the first overall selection through the lottery. So this means that they will most likely be drafting Macklin Celebrini, and this doesn't really change up their squad all that much. Yes, they'll be getting a generational talent that some people might be predicting him to be, but outside of that, their roster isn't ready to become some sensational Stanley Cup winner. So I like that the Sharks got this pick, but it really doesn't change the league at all because, well, this is what actually happened and the final team got the first overall pick. Let's move on to the 2023 draft, and this is the year of Connor Bedard, so there was a ton of hype around this one. And the worst team in the league that year ended up being the Anaheim Ducks, giving them that 18.5% odds that the worst team usually gets. But unfortunately for Anaheim this year, it wasn't even the second pick that took over for them. It was the Chicago Blackhawks at 11.5% odds, the third worst team in the league, who ended up getting the number one spot and earning that Connor Bedard draft pick. So let's potentially just see if Connor Bedard ended up on the Anaheim Ducks, what this roster would look like. Well, putting Connor Bedard on this young core with guys like McTavish, Zegras, Terry, Vetrano, and now Leo Carlsson moving out, I think this team would be much better than they are right now with Leo Carlsson. Bedard had a fantastic rookie year, and this type of generational talent would really make the Ducks a much better squad to look at, especially now that they got Cutter Gauthier as well. I mean, could you imagine those two playing together? This one's a little bit unfortunate for Anaheim. I think some people considered it to be rigged, but this is one of those situations where I feel like Connor Bedard would have been much better off playing in Anaheim than he is right now in Chicago, but this is how it turned out. Anaheim misses out on the generational talent and gets bumped down to number 2 in this draft, with Chicago taking the number 1 spot with 11.5% odds. Moving on to 2022, the Montreal Canadiens are the worst team in the league this year, giving them the top odds in that draft, 18.5%, and they end up getting the first overall selection, taking Slavkovsky. Again, nothing super crazy here. This isn't one of those years that could have been game-changing for the NHL. Montreal gets a good selection, and that's just that for this year. Moving on to 2021, the Buffalo Sabres get the win in the lottery draft after being the worst team in the league. This year, they had a 16.6% odd to win the first overall selection. They win it, they select Owen Power, and now they have a great young defenseman moving forward. Nothing too exciting with this one. We're not changing the league at all. Really, we've only had one within the past 4 years where there's been sort of a shift in who won the first overall selection, not being the worst team in the league. Now, right after I say this, 2020, this one gets very interesting. So some of you might not know this, but that year, the Detroit Red Wings were the worst team in the NHL, giving them that 18.5% odds that we've been talking about for a lot of the other teams. But it's not even the next best team that wins the odds, or even the third best team. You have to look as far as the New York Rangers being one of the bottom team percentages in this draft, who ends up getting the first overall selection, and with that, drafting one of their cornerstone pieces right now in Alexis Lafreniere. Now, if we do this redraft and give the Detroit Red Wings the first overall selection, they would instead draft Alexis Lafreniere instead of Lucas Raymond. And I think some fans might argue that Lucas Raymond is a little bit better than Alexis Lafreniere, but with the season he's having, I think he would be a much bigger game changer for the Red Wings and probably would have had more early on success playing on that younger younger squad than he has had on the Rangers with all of the veterans that they're currently using. I think that the Red Wings did miss out on a better selection here. I do think that Lucas Raymond is a great consolation prize, but I think Alexis Lafreniere's ceiling is continuing to grow, and he would have looked amazing over with the Red Wings. Moving on to 2019, this one's easily the most interesting. The Colorado Avalanche have the best odds at 18.5% to take the first overall pick, Jack Hughes, that year, but unfortunately, it's the New Jersey Devils who end up winning it at 11.5%, and they steal Jack Hughes from under the Avs. Now, if we go back and give Jack Hughes to the Colorado Avalanche since they had the best odds, could you imagine the dynasty that would be built with that team? Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Jack Hughes. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest teams in NHL history at this point. I think that this team would be amazing, win multiple championships, and unfortunately, we just never got to see it. Jack Hughes is on New Jersey. Colorado misses out in this one, but this one would have been a massive change across the league. 2018, another boring one. Buffalo has the best odds, 18.5% to get Rasmus Dahlin with the first overall pick. They do exactly that. Buffalo drafts Dahlin and then Owen Power a few years later, giving themselves two stud defensemen with the first overall selection. Nothing crazy with this one. I think that Buffalo deserved it this year. They were clearly the worst team and needed a good, solid first overall pick, especially after missing out a few years earlier on another generational type of player. 2017, and again, we have a situation where the Colorado Avalanche have the best odds to take that first overall lottery pick. And again, the New Jersey Devils somehow overtake that top spot with an 8.5% compared to the Avs' 18%, giving them Nico Hischier. Now, this one is nowhere near as aggressive as the Jack Hughes one. I mean, could you imagine if Colorado managed to get Nico Hischier and then Jack Hughes just a few years later? I mean, again, this is all speculation because these teams probably wouldn't be finishing in the same positions had they draft some of these players, but putting Nico Hischier on this team, I still think that's a great upgrade for the Avs. Give yourself a great second line center to pair along with Nathan MacKinnon, potentially Mikko Rantanen. I mean, we're talking about a huge change to this roster that could have bettered the Avs for years to come. 2016, another boring one and the highest odds on this list. The Toronto Maple Leafs have a 20% chance to win the lottery. They get it and earn themselves Auston Matthews. I think it is worth noting here that the Winnipeg Jets skyrocketed up to the number 2 position with a 7.5% chance, and the Columbus Blue Jackets bumped themselves up with a 9.5% chance as well. So it went Toronto, Winnipeg, and then Columbus, with Edmonton and Vancouver getting bumped down even though they had some pretty high odds. Toronto gets Auston Matthews. He's been a great addition to their team and should be their best player for many years to come, but nothing too exciting with this one. And the final draft that we're taking a look at is 2015, the Connor McDavid year, a player who could change any organization. The Buffalo Sabres finished last and they have a 20% chance to win it. And I think at the time, everyone believed that the Sabres were going to get this pick, but out of nowhere, the third selection, the Edmonton Oilers, with an 11.5% chance, bump above the Arizona Coyotes and the Buffalo Sabres to earn themselves Connor McDavid. Now, in this situation, this is the first time I've seen a lot of people say that the draft was rigged, but let's just kind of pretend that Connor McDavid was drafted by Buffalo in the first place. Putting him on a roster was Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power later on. Again, we're just hypothetically saying that they were going to get the first overall pick in all of the years later. I think that Connor McDavid would be in one of the best positions in the NHL. A great blue line, a solid young roster, up-and-coming goalies. With McDavid as your star player, I mean, I could see Buffalo being in the same position as Edmonton is today. But now that we've taken a look at all of the changes across every year's draft, let me know what you guys think about this whole thing. Do you like the draft lottery? Do you think that it's rigged to give some of the more highly financial teams a better pick to get their franchises back on course? Or do you think that it's a fair way to prevent tanking across the NHL and you actually like it? Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.